who is the King of Glory, right? It's this ancient, incredibly dramatic mystery posed over 2 millennia ago. And honestly, it still echoes with an immense amount of power and anticipation today.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a really fascinating piece of ancient literature, Psalm 24, also known as the King of Glory. Okay, so let's look right at the source document. Here's the full text of Psalm 24 from the English Standard Version. You'll see right at the top, it's attributed as a Psalm of David. And what's really cool is we can actually break this majestic 10-verse poem down into 3 distinct acts. It's literally a masterclass in literary structure. The author brilliantly builds tension, starting way out with the vastness of the physical cosmos, zooming all the way down into the intimate intentions of the human heart, and then ending with this grand royal arrival. So we kick off Act 1 with this massive panoramic shot. Verse 1 boldly declares, "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell therein." Right out of the gate, the text establishes God's macro ownership over the entire physical world. And notice, it's not just the land or the geography, right? It's the world and every single person who lives in it. That is a massive, sweeping claim of absolute universal sovereignty.
And then, in the very next verse, it justifies exactly why this ownership exists. Quote, "For he has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the rivers." Let's just linger on that beautiful phrasing for a second. It perfectly illustrates how ancient poetry describes the Earth's creation, using this vivid imagery of solid ground being ordered and established out of chaotic, watery depths. It basically sets the stage for the rest of the poem by reminding us, the one who built the stage owns the stage.
Now we dramatically zoom in for Act 2. The scope rapidly narrows from the entire cosmos down to a very specific location and poses a deeply personal question. Who shall ascend the hill of the Lord, and who shall stand in his holy place? The logic here is super powerful. If this divine creator owns the entire earth and literally everyone in it, who among us is actually worthy to walk up and stand in his presence?
And here is the crucial point. We can demystify this ancient poetry by breaking its answer down into a clear, actionable checklist. Verse 4 lays out the exact requirements for approaching the divine. Just look at the balance here. Clean hands and a pure heart. It perfectly contrasts physical action, what you actually do, with internal intention, what you feel. It demands a person who doesn't lift their soul to what is false and who doesn't swear deceitfully. We're talking about a shockingly high standard of total integrity. It covers both what you do out in the open and what you harbor inside where absolutely nobody else can see.
But meeting those demanding, intensely personal requirements leads to a pretty profound result. Verse 5 outlines the outcome. He will receive blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation. See, the ancient text is directly linking internal integrity and truthfulness to a resulting divine blessing. It paints a picture of a totally reciprocal relationship. You bring the pure heart, and God provides the righteousness and salvation.
Okay, before we jump into the grand finale of this text, let's take a really quick detour behind the scenes. We're going to look at a fascinating translation detail, kind of a textual Easter egg, if you will, buried right in the footnotes of verse 6. What's super interesting here is the contrast between our main translation and some historical alternatives. So the main ESV text reads, "Who seek the face of the God of Jacob." Now, that phrasing relies on ancient sources like the Greek Septuagint and the Syriac translation. But if you glance down at the footnote for the traditional Hebrew Masoretic text, it reads just a little bit differently. It says, "Who seek your face, Jacob." It's a really subtle grammatical shift, sure, but it brilliantly illustrates the incredibly complex, painstaking process of preserving and translating these ancient texts, and how modern scholars have to weigh all these historical variations. All right, let's move into Act 3 and see how this whole thing builds to its magnificent climax. Imagine panning the camera up to these massive, ancient city gates swinging wide open. The poetry suddenly shifts into a direct command. Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors. See, we've moved completely away from the individual examining their heart to the grand architecture of a fortress or temple. The climax is coming, and the very architecture of the ancient world is literally being ordered to make way. But why? Why do these ancient doors need to be lifted? Well, that the King of Glory may come in. You can actually feel the narrative energy completely shift right here. Back in Act 2, we were talking about humans ascending the hill to seek God. But now we're anticipating the triumphant, downward arrival of a divine royal figure coming to claim his space. But of course,
This massive royal arrival prompts a question from the sentry standing at the gates, and it uses this incredibly rhythmic call-and-response pacing that is so typical of original Hebrew poetry. Who is this King of Glory? It's this deliberate dramatic pause. It's designed to let the mystery just hang in the air for a second.
And then you get the powerful, booming answer to that call. The Lord, strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. This isn't just the cosmic architect we saw back in verse 2. No, this is a victorious, unstoppable warrior king returning in absolute triumph. The energy is so focused, so intense, and totally commanding.
But the author really knows how to build suspense, because guess what? The poem's not quite finished yet. Verse 9 repeats the exact same command, word for word. Lift up your heads, O gates, and lift them up, O ancient doors, that the King of Glory may come in. Now, repeating this command isn't just redundant text, it's a deliberate structural tool. It rapidly builds up this dramatic momentum and liturgical energy, demanding your absolute, complete attention for the final reveal.
So for the second time, the ultimate question is posed, driving the poetic arc to its absolute peak. Who is this King of Glory?
And finally, to close the poem, the supreme title is revealed. The Lord of Hosts, He is the King of Glory. Selah. The Lord of Hosts, literally the commander of heavenly armies. The poem resolves all of its immense tension with this absolute, definitive declaration of majesty. And hey, notice that final word there, Selah. It's actually an ancient musical direction. It's effectively instructing the musicians and the listeners to just pause, take a breath, and deeply reflect on the majestic resolution they just experienced. So what does this all mean for us today? As we step back from those ancient, lifted gates and the sheer cosmic scale of this text, we're left with a profoundly personal challenge derived straight from Act 2. In our modern world, one that's filled with complex truths, layered agendas, and, honestly, endless deceit, what does it truly mean for you to cultivate clean hands and a pure heart? It's this ancient standard of unwavering integrity, yet somehow it feels a lot more demanding and absolutely more relevant today than ever before. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.